number one Group of Five football podcast in all of the world. This is the Group of Five guys. Our mission is to be the voice for the Group of Five football programs that the mainstream sports media refuses to be. We need your help to do that. We need you to follow us on all the social media platforms at Group of Five guys. Go to YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe to the channel. Give us a 5-star rating and review. Most importantly, tell your family and friends all about us. On this episode of Inside Drill, we've got UNLV offensive coordinator Brennan Marion. Should be a heck of a show. Hope you enjoy it. Well, guys, a couple weeks ago, we had UNLV head coach on, Barry Odom, more of a defensive guy. So we had to go to the other side of the ball and get the offensive coordinator. We got UNLV offensive coordinator Brennan Marion. Coach Marion coming to us from Vegas. Coach, how are you, sir?
Awesome. I appreciate you guys and everything you do for G5 football.
Coach, well, my first question is this, because you're probably the most active coach that we've seen on social media, especially on Twitter or X. Any particular reason why? I mean, you got like 89,000 followers. I was just looking. Any reason why, or what got you started on that?
Really, I learned Twitter from Kenny Dillingham when we were GAs at Arizona State together. I saw him bringing in a lot of different student athletes, and I was like, man, how the heck do you bring in all these guys? Like, how do you get these recruits here? And he was like, Twitter. And I was like, the hell is Twitter? And then, I just used it as I already knew a lot of people, but I never really connected with them through social media. I really wasn't a social media guy. I didn't use it. And then I just saw how many people you could connect to from, all over the world, all over, just through thoughts and ideas, and, see guys like Dan Casey and different people who have blown up just from, putting content and different stuff on Twitter, from anywhere in the world or country, and, just started to use it as a tool to connect with coaches and players and, recruiting, and it kind of just took off.
Yeah. So with recruiting, because I see it on Twitter all the time. Anytime a coach says anything on Twitter, they get, 10 high school kids that drop their huddle and their stats and their numbers below. So full transparency, when that happens, are you clicking on them? Do you already know most of those kids that are commenting, or is there a guy, have you ever had a guy that was like, I've never watched this kid, let me click it, and he turns out to be a player?
Yeah, I remember, like, sometimes those, like, not even on Twitter, like those recruiting services, they'll send you like a list of like just random, you'll just get like all these emails of just randomness. And I remember one time we were at William and Mary, we clicked on a kid, me and Coach London's son, Deuce, and he ended up being like out of this world for us. Like, he ended up being a great player. He played for us at UNLV this past year, and he was a hell of a player. Donovan Lester was a guy we clicked on just from a random, search online, so that was one of the ones where it was like random and it actually wasn't a good player. And now that guy, the guy who we always say, like, people's credit scores go up if they have good players that they send that are, solid players. Now that guy is, he ended up working with us last year, and he works for Inside Texas as an insider now. And, Charlie, I think he did a good job of, hounding you a nonstop of, and he actually had good players. I mean, I think he had probably like 6 or 7 guys that ended up going Division I from his email chain of these player can really play, and sending it over and over again.
Is it like, on the coach's end, is it harder almost to recruit because now there is so much information and so many ways where, you can get in contact where now it's almost is like your pool even bigger now with social media and Twitter and things like that?
Yeah, I think the one thing that Twitter has done is let people who didn't have the ability to make it to the next level, the NFL, the CFL, see that there's talent everywhere. One thing from being in an NFL locker room as a player, you see people from all over, small school, big school, D2, D3, didn't play football, Canada, like everywhere. And you're like, damn, where the hell did he come from? And that dude can play. And then when I went to the CFL, it was the same thing in Montreal, just seeing guys from everywhere, like all over the world, and being like, wow, there's football players everywhere, And I think social media gives kids that might be in a small area or somewhere where, they're not a hotbed for football an opportunity to be seen and, show their talents.
Well, Coach, you talked about being a player a little bit, had a hell of a playing career, but started at De Anza College. I'm a Laney College guy, transferred to
That's
Middle Tennessee, so you were 2 years before me. We played you guys back in the JUCO days. Talk about your life as a player, coming from the JUCO ranks to playing at Tulsa, having a hell of a career, and then getting, into the NFL.
yeah. I always tell guys like, when you really have to work for it, it's special. Anybody who's been through California's ecosystem knows that there's no housing, there's nothing really glamorous about it. I mean, we had. I remember when I first went to Foothill, there was like 6 or 7 of us living in a 1 bedroom. All from out of state, away from your family, just trying to figure it out and make a way. Everybody in there like, man, I got this football dream, and just trying to find a way to actually make it happen. So, I always say that story gives me a lot of, street cred with the kids, just saying like you can start from nothing and make something of yourself. I'm able to show, my story, being able to inspire other guys, that they can go to Division 1, make an impact, from regardless of where they came from or what they did in high school. And I think that, just that story gives me the ability to connect with kids, not just the star player, but the walk-on player, the guy who, because going to JUCO is basically walking on. I mean, you're basically betting on yourself and trying to, make it happen. So anybody in that locker room, I'm able to connect and go through what phase they're at. I've been the player who was, walking onto a JUCO. I got, kicked out of a JUCO. I got good grades, had bad grades, had, all those different phases that you go through as a player. I've been through all those different phases.
Well, Coach, talking about your playing career at Tulsa, you were a guy that caught a lot of big plays, deep balls. So do you use that, now in your coaching philosophy? Is it something you want to reward these receivers, reward these quarterbacks with big plays?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, when I was a kid growing up, I grew up in Pittsburgh, and you always see the Lynn Swann and John Stallworth highlights and clips. And I always teach quarterbacks about throwing the moon ball, the old NFL films, acting like you're throwing it out of the stadium and seeing the ball fall down, and Jerry Rice and all these guys, running underneath the football. So to me, that was always one of the things that, the reason why one thing, Randy Moss was my favorite receiver. And, him always, you got Moss and making the big plays down the field. And I looked up, he averaged like 19 or 20 yards per catch. And I always said, I want to be, whatever the record is, I want to be more than that. And, I think for me, just something about taking the air out of the defense, like you can dink and dunk your way down there, but those 1-play drives or, 3-play drives that you can have, really take the air out of that sideline. Like, man, they can score at any time, they want you to be in 14, 15 play drives on defense. That means that, they feel like they have the roof on you. They pretty much are stopping you, and methodical drives. They know an offense will mess it up the more they have the ball and more, more opportunities to lose the ball. But when you can just put it in the end zone or 1 or 2 plays, and have that deep threat element to your offense, I mean, it does make you a special unit.
Yeah. Coach, you mentioned growing up in Pittsburgh. So just talk about kind of growing up, when you started playing football, when you wanted to play football, and then how you ended up all the way in California at the JUCO level.
Yeah, I mean, so my older brother, I have an older brother and an uncle. They're about 7 years older than me. And, when I was a kid, I just remember my first little football memory was in my grandfather's backyard. And we had like the little plastic helmets, at my grandpa's house. And I put a plastic helmet on. And the older kids they were whooping my ass, like they were hitting the hell out of me. And I go in the house to my grandfather, like crying, like, bro, like, I don't know about this football thing. I was like 4 or 5. And, I just kept going back out there. I was like a pain freak. I loved it. I just kept going back out there, like seeing if I could make a play on these guys. I couldn't. I mean, those guys were pretty good, and they were older than me. But, just the excitement of trying to be able to make a play, the maneuver, and make something happen, really was just like, and I started to like keep making plays on them. I figured out like, running circles, shake them, like finding out ways to make plays. And I remember my older brother, he didn't play football. He was, more of, he was more intellectual, artistic. He was like, man, we're going to make you a football player. So, we lived in like Section 8, project housing, and I would run around. He put like bricks in my book bag, and I'd run around with the bricks in my book bag, like getting ready for football, doing push-ups. He would walk me to practice like 2 miles. And I remember, like, this is a great story for people, but when I was a kid, football was $25, like it was $25. And we were struggling. I mean, $25. My mom was like, "No, you're not playing football. We can't afford it. The lights will be off. Like, you can't play." And so my brother like kept begging. I kept crying, "Mom, please, like I'm good. I promise I won't. Like I'll be good." And one day she comes home from work. She's pissed. She throws the $25 at my brother, like he better be good. And so me and my brother are we're like nervous. We're like, "Bro, like this gotta work out. Like
we got to make this happen."
Yeah. So the first game I had like 5 touchdowns, and I was like, every touchdown I score, I always tell the players, like every touchdown I score, I'm looking at my mom like, yeah, like I'm the one that told you, like I'm trying to prove it, So that was one of the things that, that was kind of what got me into football. And then as I got older, everybody has hoop dreams and thought I was a basketball player, and then living in bad situations, at times, didn't know if I wanted to do the street kid thing or be in the sports, just a lot of different stuff going on. And I remember, just there was a friend of mine who went out to California, and he was like, "Man, like they got these junior colleges." And I'm like, "What the heck is junior college?" Because, the crazy thing is how I'm able to connect with kids, not only as my playing career, but I moved every year. So what I thought was like a curse on my life when I was a kid, like every single year I moved. So I went to 2 or 3 elementary schools. I went to 4 or 5 middle schools. I went to 4 or 5 high schools. So we were always moving. So I was always like, my grades were always struggling because I was always moving, getting adjusted to a new school, new classes, new teachers. And so my senior year was the first year that I actually got a full season to play football in high school. And I did well enough, at that point to get schools to start looking at me. Joe Moorhead, actually, I talked to him last week. He was like the first coach that was like interested in me when he was at Akron, a long time ago as an assistant before now being the head coach there. And he was like, "Man, like, I just didn't have the class requirements and stuff you needed to get right." And so one of my friends actually, Charles, he had went out to the Bay Area to wrestle. A wrestling coach had brought him out there. He went to states in wrestling, and he went to junior college for football. And he had told me, like, "Man, you can come out here, your grades, what your grades were in high school don't matter. Like, you can do this and do that." And that's how I actually got out to junior college in California.
Has there been a moment like since then, like when you first, you got your first NFL paycheck, or, now you've been in football a long time, where you talk to your brother, your uncle, or your mom and say like, man, thank you for that $25, because there's no telling, where you might be if not for that?
Yeah, I'm forever indebted to my brother and my mom. I mean, my brother did one of the greatest things for me that I think anybody could do. My older brother, ultimately, he was like my dad growing up. And when I was at Deanne's, I was living in the locker room. And really, like, my brother had enough money at the time to like make sure I had my own place and stuff. Like he could have gave me the money and just bailed me out and made it easy on me. But one thing he told me was like, I'm like, "Bro, like I just had a game, like 2 or 3 touchdowns." And he's like, "What are you going to do after this?" I'm like, "I'm going to go back in the locker room, chill, like, do my normal little process." And he gave me like a gift card for food for like $150, like from Safeway. He gave me like a little gift card. And I'm like, "Bro, I need somewhere to live. Forget a gift card." He's like, "Adversity just makes the story better. Like it's good. Like you're fine. Like look what you just did out there. Like you're good. Like you're going to make it. Like everything's going to work out." And, like there were times where, like there was probably people in my life that if I would have cried about it and begged, like somebody would have probably given me the money or, taken care of it. But it was like a time where, people say you got to go in the dark sometimes and just like make it happen. Like that JUCO thing was like my dream, and we found a way to, make it happen. Like God is good. It all worked out. But, just looking back on it, all the times of, struggling, and my mom and my brother like believing in the dream and, giving me a little push or giving me a little, money or food I remember me and my mom used to live off Western Unions back and forth, like when I'd get some money, if I got like a I remember like, work study programs and, working little odd jobs. If I got some money, I'd send her money. If she had some money extra, she'd send me money, just living back and forth on that. And, that's what makes the story what it is now. When you do well and you're successful now, it's like, bro, it wasn't always like that. There was times where we had to, do whatever it took to make sure we made this thing work.
Just an incredible story. And now look at you. I mean, OC of UNLV and one of the top offenses in the Mountain West. And last year, I mean, you guys were actually fairly balanced and had a stable of running backs. Collectively, including the quarterback as well, rushed over 2,000 yards. Is that something you want to do as an offense, be able to control the ground game? Is that something that's important to you?
Yeah, I think anytime you look at teams that are in the big game, you look at teams that win the championship, right? You look at Michigan last year, they played great defense and they ran the football and they had a vertical passing game. You look at Alabama throughout the years, it's always been a great running game. Being able to attack you vertically down the field and play good defense, So growing up for me, like I grew up in Pittsburgh and you just watch winning football over and over again, of being consistent on winning, and it's running the ball, taking shots down the field and playing great defense. So, even though I'm a receiver at heart and I'd love to just throw the ball and just air raid it every single play, I just know that, when I look at teams that are in the championship game, if you're about really winning football, you have to be about running the ball. And I think the first thing I did was when I was a high school, offensive coordinator, the first thing that I thought of was like, I got to call Coach Hand. I got to call all these O-line guys. I got to go to these O-line clinics and learn O-line play and run game, because I know that's what's going to help us win games. And ultimately, the passing game takes time. I mean, the passing game takes, talented receivers, talented quarterback. And when you're in high school level, you're not just going to you're not blessed with the best throwing quarterback and the best wide receivers. You typically will have better running backs. Guys coming from Little League, they don't throw the ball in Little League. They can get a handoff, though, and take it 60 yards. They're used to doing that. So ultimately just wanted to make sure that, had a great run scheme where we had a chance to, play winning football and control the game.
Well, you're going to have a different guy behind center this year. Specifically at the quarterback position, I'd love to know, what are the characteristics you look in a guy?
Yeah, I heard Rajon Rondo talking the other day about how when he was a point guard in basketball, that they told him that he was the quarterback. And for us, when we look at a quarterback, we're looking at somebody we feel is the point guard of the offense. I always say that I relate to the quarterback because I played point guard all my life growing up. That's how I relate to the quarterback, because I did not play the quarterback position. But when I'm talking to those guys, I'm talking to them about having the ball in your hand, because it's all well and good. You can prepare as much as you can, but when they get out there on the grass, it's like you have the ball, you make the decision. Ultimately, what you do with the ball in your hand is what, is going to lead us to wins and victory. And so, we're looking for guys that, can handle the moment, guys that, can lead the team in our absence. Our quarterbacks run practices and are going to do things behind the scenes that are going to get shown on Friday or on Saturday nights. They're going to get shown what they did throughout the summer and the spring with the guys. So all those intangible things that you look at, guys that can make quick decisions, obviously with the ball in their hand, because in the run game, we do use an option style of offense, even though it's, normal run schemes that everybody else has run. We have, the triple option element based on most of our runs. So that guy has to be able to make quick decisions and reads and play with great eyes and feet. And so, there's a lot of things that go into it, but really the mentality is to be a point guard, to have the ball in your hand, to be able to see the adjustments and movements of the defense and be able to always put us in a position to move the ball forward and go score.
Well, Coach, you mentioned spring practice. You're going. This is your another season at being the offensive coordinator. Another season of getting the guys implemented with your system. How did everything go with spring ball this season?
It was great. I mean, from the standpoint of, anytime you talk about our level right now, it's like AAA baseball. Not too many of our guys got called away from our team, so
it's huge.
Having the continuity of our guys coming back, it's different now. When we came here, there wasn't a lot of All-Americans and all-conference guys in the room. Now, after guys are All-Americans, all-conference, and they start to get that acclaim and status, the confidence is different. The belief is different. So we're able to move at a more accelerated pace because guys know the system works and they have confidence in it. So we were able to move a little bit faster, install a little bit more. If you've seen our offense, we're very multiple. We do a lot of different things. And it'll always be different and unique to the guys that we have this season. So spring was really good for us. We stayed healthy from that standpoint. We brought in some freshmen, some transfers, some new quarterbacks, and I think that the guys really took the system and really ran with it. And then you had a nucleus of guys, core group of guys who really believe in the system, and they're forcing guys to accelerate their process and operate at a standard now instead of just, coaches screaming and yelling. It's players holding each other accountable, to the winning standard that we've created here.
Well, Coach, that's all we got for you tonight, man. We can't thank you enough. We can't, honestly, you are the most active guy on social media, so we can't thank you enough for any of the likes, the retweets. That definitely helps us out for sure. And, we told this to Coach Odom, and we've been saying this for a long time, but UNLV to us is a freaking absolute sleeping giant. And you started to wake up a little bit. So it's scary hours in the Mountain West and for the rest of college football right now. So, but Coach, we can't thank you enough. We're rooting for you guys. Coach Brennan Marion, UNLV offensive coordinator. Safe travels to Dallas, Coach. Well, boys, I mean, UNLV, sleeping giant for sure.
Absolutely. And I love his just personal story. That's what I love most about these things is getting to, a deep dive on how they grew up, where they come from, their journey, because everybody's journey is different and everyone's got a story to tell. So appreciate Coach, sharing that story with us and everyone that was watching and listening. And I mean, he seems like a guy who's got an innovative mind and, but is not too arrogant where he thinks he knows everything.
Yeah.
Like being a receiver, being a big play guy, understanding championship football, a lot of times starts with the ground game. So that investment of learning how the ground game works and they run some interesting, different sets of all different styles, triple option, zone read. I mean, they'll spread you out and go 5 wide. So it's a fun offense to watch. And there's one of the reasons why they were in the championship game last year. Interested to see if they make a big step this year.
Yeah. And I mean, he said it about getting Ricky White to come back. I mean, I imagine that guy could have went a lot of places. So
sure,
whatever, whatever the Fertitta family and the Vegas casino money came up with, or whatever persuasion they did, but and in all seriousness, but I'll say this, and I don't know Ricky White's story at all, but with Coach Marion's story, that resonates with a lot of kids, especially in football, man. I mean, a lot of guys are coming from similar type backgrounds. They're in a tough spot. And so it's great to, from a guy that was in a tough spot and sort of grinded and moved and, went all over the place and made it to, where he's at now, which is an offensive coordinator at one of the top Division I schools in the country. So really cool to hear that. And I'm looking forward to UNLV, man. I mean, I hope that they can keep it going. I hope that it was not a one-hit wonder or anything last year.
No, I think they'll be able to keep it going. I mean, you retain most of your top players other than a few guys. And Odom, I mean, we got the chance to talk to him now, the OC. Like, they got good guys. And Odom mentioned this. They've retained all their coaches. So you have that continuity moving forward. They're going to be a problem in the Mountain West. And who knows, man, if they have a tough stretch up front on their schedule, but they can get through it, get past it. You never know. They could be a team that's, hunting for that playoff spot. You never know.
Well, you put a playoff game in Vegas in December on New Year's Eve. Woo! That's one. I know I've made some promises about some games. That's one that I'm gonna have to have everybody come talk to my wife about. But no, that'd be that's a good point about the coaches and bringing the players back. It's a culture, and they've now established a standard. And a winning culture. And so it's tough, man. It's tough to lose when everybody's winning, on the same page. You know what I mean? So definitely looking forward to watching UNLV this year. But can't thank Coach enough. What you got, Tip?
Well, I was going to say, and he has players that have bought into his offensive system, right? And you get those leaders on the offensive side of the ball. You get those freshmen and those transfer players come in, like he mentioned. You have those leaders that have bought into his system that are teaching and coaching these incoming players and getting them bought in and showing them like, hey, like this offense really works. So that to all of our points, like I think that's the reason why like you're gonna see a step up this year with UNLV and in particular that offense.
Is Torrey Horton back at Colorado State?
Believe so.
You got some receivers out west now. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. And then, but the problem is they all got to play that damn Air Force triple option. It really screws up the offensive excitement. That's something, that's something I wanted to ask him about. That is when you're an offensive coordinator and you do have to play a team like Air Force every year, like because you've got to call plays differently now. Because what you can't do. What you cannot do is if you're a team now, they run the ball. I'm not saying they're like an air raid or like whatever, but what you can't have when you play a team like that is they go on an 8-minute drive and then you come back and go 3 and out and it takes 14 seconds off the clock. Yeah. And then you give it right back to them and they're about to go on another 8-minute drive. You can't do that because then you're putting your defense in a tough spot and you're going to have all the fans about, oh, our defense sucks. We couldn't stop anybody. It's like, well, sometimes you have to look at the big picture of these things. But anyway, I wish I would have asked him that about game planning when you're playing a school like that. But anyway, that's all we got for you guys today. That was Inside Drill. That was UNLV offensive coordinator Brennan Marion. If you like the show, make sure you subscribe to the channel, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Leave a 5-star rating, leave a review, tell your family and friends all about us. And then make sure you follow us on all the social media platforms at Group of Five Guys. That's all we got for you guys